Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ed Army, and as you can tell by the thumbnail, we are debating today or trying to figure out if Mululu or Lukias is the better normal summon, who is actually the better normal summon in the strategy, and we're going to actually have some pretty good looking at of this argument and figure out today. But before I get into it, I have to get this shameless plug out of the way. I just want to tell you that you should join the Ed Army as we are on the storm to 1,000 subs, and we can get there with your help. I do appreciate it as we're pushing the limits and going even further, and I'm very thankful for you. Also, for anyone who had seen my post, I just wanted to appreciate it. Yes, I had a really tough week last week, and I mean a very tough week, and I just wanted to let you guys know because it's important when things are growing on the channel or people are starting to join in. But I wanted to make sure that I let you guys know how I'm feeling and how things were going, just on the aspect of life gets tough for all of us, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand I'm a real person just like you, and things are tough. But I'm going to get through them and still make stuff for you guys as I'm not giving up on the channel. So we're going to be jumping into it as we dive into today's topic, as we're going to be talking about both Lukias and Mululu. Well, you can call him Lukias. I remember someone calling it Lukias, and I was like, that's kind of funny. But the point is, these two have been debated at least since Dracotail's inception here in the TCG about which one is the better normal summon. I've seen a lot of people say Mululu is the better normal summon. Many people say Lukias is the better normal summon, but we're going to try to actually dispel that today, or try to figure out where maybe both of these are true, as I believe that's a possibility. Now, going into it, let's just get this out of the way. When we receive Dooms of Dimension, there will in theory be 3 possible normal summons for the strategy. This is just because there are monsters that are obviously lower than level 4, and Frixel is a normal and special summon effect, so Frixel will also be a part of this contention when we get into Dooms of Dimension. But for the time being right now, we only have the 2 monsters that can be normal summoned, and I mean that literally because, every other monster in the Dracotail archetype that's in the main deck is a level 5 or higher monster, so it is important to keep that in mind. But we're going to go off of this. So we're starting off with Lukias, and we're talking about its benefits. So the best thing about Lukias, and we're talking about it honestly, is that it searches for any monster of the archetype during its normal or special summon, so that covers for everything literally, and it has decent stats actually. So if there is a time where you just need to go to battle phase to attack stuff, you can totally do that. And additionally, it allows you to set a spell or trap, which is obviously a part of the Dracotail archetype in that regard. So I just wanted to make it clear because those are all the massive benefits that Lukias has offhand. Now, as we move into Mululu, Mululu is very different. So Mululu doesn't actually search for anything. What it does is it gives you a fusion ability during its main effect for its quick effect, and it is a strong play / combo enabler, which is my main thing for Mululu, is that it allows you to get started in terms, or not started, but it allows you to facilitate your plays a bit easier, and also allows you to combo a bit more effectively when you have cards and resources to use. And additionally, it allows you to set spells and traps, but it also has the beneficial effect to negate monsters by having a non-target, obviously, when you resolve the set effect from it. So all the Dracotail monsters share the set effect, but all the dragon-based Dracotails actually have a beneficial effect to go with their actual sets. So it allows them for a possible potential of hitting opponents' resources. Now, based on those 2 alone, I think it's a little bit interesting that we look at it, because when we look at both Lukias and Mululu, 2 things are very clear at the same time. Both of them have different usages for their effects. So obviously Lukias is just technically like a Rhoda or a Searcher, so it is a bit easier to understand what that's trying to achieve, get you the pieces. But Mululu is very important because it is the only main deck monster at the time that can be normal summoned that allows you to fusion summon. So that can't be underestimated how important that is for the archetype at the time, because outside of the other cards, there is no other way to physically get a fusion summon going without actually having to use stuff like Rahu and Femina and even K2, but those are all non-locked into their other effects, and then Femina needs other monsters. So Mululu also provides that by being the only monster that can just hit the field and allow you to fuse. Now, their benefits are there, but let's talk about it in conjunction with the other parts of the archetype where we get an understanding. So I do want to mention one of the benefits that is clearly stated is the fact of their synergy with the other monsters. So if we're looking at it that way, one of the main things that is massive benefit in terms of Lukias is that it gets you to any of the missing pieces in the archetype. I think this is obviously why it's really strong. Getting access to Phymina, getting access to Pan or Gula, even if you want to add Mululu from Lukias's effect, you can totally do that. The point is, all your missing pieces or pieces you would like to add to your hand that are monsters can definitely be added through Lukias. So Lukias does fix the issue of if you wanted a specific monster for a specific reason, you are able to grab it. Additionally, we have to keep in mind that both of the monsters can allow you to effectively set cards off of their second effects. So this is important to just mention because in this regard, I think they both have that benefit that all the Dracotail monsters possess, but it is to not be understated about how useful it is, because on both of them kind of have a different way of looking at it. So what I mean by this is if you were to use something like Lukias to grab a monster like Phymina to fusion summon, it makes a little bit more sense in the regards of you're going to be able to access your K2, your Rahu, all your traps in that regard, because now you're adding a monster to your hand. Whereas Mululu, although it does not allow you to do that because it doesn't add anything to your hand, it does allow you to facilitate the fusion plays, which still allow you to go ahead and set cards. So that is where I'm trying to make sure that it's made clear that there is benefits to both in different ways, because it's the way you navigate with their effects. Now, moving into their additional benefits, we have to look about it when they're combined with other cards. The clear thing for Lukias in terms of when you establish the archetype or the whole archetype is that adding Phymina or any extra piece is not to be underestimated. It's really important. It is the best normal in combo. Now, the reason I say that is when you're comboing off or wanting to start a combo, there is nothing wrong by just normal summoning Lukias and grabbing a piece. I do think that's kind of honest that it is the best normal for a combo, because it just gets you another resource to your hand that you might want to use. And then also it can be added back to the hand. I did want to make sure this was mentioned because it is a spellcaster, so that is one of its best resources that we haven't addressed yet, is that Urgula can put this back into your hand, and I do think that's actually very important when we're talking about the entire context of the deck. Now, looking into Mululu, Mululu is actually very interesting because its Fusion Quick effect does not leave, because that is very important to the archetype, because this is one of your only other ways to access Fusion Summoning effectively. But additionally, this makes all of your monster hands, or hands where there's mostly just monsters, because that's kind of how Dracotail works, it makes a lot more playable. So if you don't open Phymina but you open Mululu, Mululu can fix those hands and also allow you to kind of get all these effects going off. Additionally, it reacts to interactions, but also it can have some board breaking potential thanks to its effect. This is because Mululu's effect is a quick effect, so if your opponent decides to hand trap or do an interaction, you can use Mululu to fuse and then get Mululu off the field as well, if you want to also cycle in its negate effect. So I just wanted to keep that as a understanding for most people, is that Mululu has those abilities, as in combination with other cards, it does have the ability to be a little bit more beneficial going second. So that is something that we'll address in a minute. But additionally, when we go back to looking at them, we're still kind of on this decision tree of have we established which is the better normal summon. Now, I do think based on everything I've said so far, we kind of have an idea of kind of what does its job better in a different scenario versus what does its job worse in a different scenario. As like if you normal summon a Lukias into a board filled with negates and stuff, it's probably not resolving, whereas a Mululu normal summon into a board becomes a little bit more interesting, because if your opponent wants to do some type of interaction negation immediately, they need to fire it off, as the Mululu can chain itself to whatever they would do. So it is important in those regards. But going through the final benefits, I do think when we look at what we get for Lukias, Phymina access is probably the biggest thing I say, because once you get access to Phymina, you want to keep cycling Phymina to fusion summon. Also, the increased layers is not going, or increased plays is not going to be missed, because Lukias does allow you to increase your ability to play by adding Phymina, even adding the actual copies of Mululu if you need to for fusion summoning. I think it's really important that we don't underestimate Lukias being able to add the monsters, because it also means you can get Urgula or also Pan, so that you can use their effects engrave if need be. And then also making sure that you can add back Lukias to the hand with Urgula is not to be underestimated, like I said. Additionally, it being a low level spellcaster is very important, because this does synergize with something like Spirit with Eyes of Blue. That monster is very important for this deck at the time, because it allows you to bridge into Hieratic Seals. So it is important to not ignore the fact that this card's specific levels and typings also do have important synergy for building a proper and more powerful version of the deck. But we also can't ignore that Mululu is, if I had to be honest, its fusion effect is just extremely important because the deck is a fusion deck, obviously. But also, going second, this card offers a lot of pressure to your opponent. So if you go ahead and normal summon this, that probably means that they're like, ooh, there might be like a Femina in hand as well, or some other cards that they don't mind normal summoning the Mululu for an interaction, because this could be really bad if you interact with the Mululu and it starts to chain its effects, and they have to bait out the interactions of your opponent. Additionally, its negate is not to be underestimated because it is non-targeting. So in a meta where everyone has access to K9 stuff and they go for a Lupus monster or like a Ripper, you can negate that Ripper because of the non-targeting protection. So yeah, that's like the best thing that Mululu also offers. So to close everything out, guys, to make sure that, I actually have a decision here, I have to be honest, I think the generic winner of being the best normal summon is going to be Lukias. I think a lot of people may debate on it, but I think Lukias is the better normal summon. That's just because I think by just nature of adding Femina to hand, because Femina is so central to the archetype and being able to grab any monster, does mean that you can even grab Mululu. So I think generically speaking, Lukias is the best winner. Now, when I move into my opinion, though, I think I personally have, for my plays, I like normal summoning Mululu more. I only like normal summoning Mululu more because I feel that if there is some type of interaction, I always feel that they're going to hit me on my Lukias search. But when it comes to Mululu, they're kind of forced to figure out what the play is, because Mululu does fusion summon, it does not search. This means that if they have an Ash, they can't Ash the Mululu in that regard. So they have to see what I'm aiming for. But also, I think I like the ability to just go Mululu, fuse 2 monsters from hand to give Arthalion the ability to bring back 2 cards from the grave. I really like having that ability, and that's just my own personal opinion. But like I said, guys, I want to know what you think. What is your choice between the two? Who do you think is the better normal summon in the deck between the Dracotail main deck monsters of these two? And let me know down below in the comments what you think, because I'm more curious to see what people have in terms of their situations, because I do think it's very situation dependent sometimes with which one is a better normal summon. But guys, that's all I've got for you today. I do hope you enjoyed this, and do your best during the week. And as always, this has been Brad from the Ed Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.